Don't think I've shared that ever before on the internet. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Carla and I make videos about how I show up for myself, be that through weight loss, beauty, fashion and mental health. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you mostly about mental health. Well, actually, I'm going to be talking to you completely and utterly fully about mental health. This is part of my How I Lost 180 Pounds series. If you haven't caught the other two videos in the series, I will leave them linked up here. I have done one about my entire kind of overview of my journey. I've also done one about the program that I did that I called my roadmap to weight loss. But this is the mental health one. And I just want to give a disclaimer first of all, before we get into it, that I am not a mental health professional nor a medical professional. So please, always seek the advice of your mental health professional before embarking on any kind, or your health professional before embarking on any kind of journey. This is my experience. This is my story and I'm sharing it with you. And please, just be very wary of that when creating any comments down below, that this is my personal journey. It's incredibly difficult and vulnerable to share this sometimes, and it can be hard, but I love to share, and I hope that it helps even just one person in doing so. So please, before you comment down below, just take a moment to remember that whomever you are commenting on might read it and they are a real person. So I just want to put that out there. So guys, if you've seen the other two videos, you know my story. I had been overweight my whole life. I had tried every diet under the sun. I had had success with body slims, but the reason that I had success, and I believe that this is the most important element of my weight loss, and the reason that my weight loss was so successful, and actually the reason that my life has become so successful over the last 3 years, is the work that I've done on my mental health. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my therapeutic background, like how I started with therapy, what type of therapies I have done, and I'm also going to chat about the impact that therapy has had on my life, and also the understanding that therapy has given me in order to change my habits and behaviors. I, as you guys know, had been overweight my entire life, and I spoke about this in my overall journey video that I went to my GP and I basically word vomited at him that I needed help. And my very first foray into therapy came then after that, and that is when I started to see a clinical psychologist whom I paid for while I was waiting for the free Irish healthcare system psychology, which took a very long time. I mentioned this in the last video as well, but I see the therapy that I did then, the very first therapy I did with the clinical psychologist whom I paid for, was cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that helped me to do was to be able to tread water, because prior to doing therapy, I was drowning. I was drowning in a sea of unhappiness and depression and anxiety and life-limiting beliefs and horrible negative self-talk and binging. Cycles of binging and purging and binging and binging and binging. And I, at that time, was unemployed, and I was really not my biggest advocate. Let's put it that way. I was probably my worst advocate. Can you be your worst advocate? What's the opposite of being an advocate? But that's what I was. I had very little self-respect, and I allowed myself to be treated in the way that represented my lack of self-respect. And so my very first therapeutic journey with the clinical psychologist was really helpful, because it helped me to start to tread water, just to keep my head above the water. That was so instrumental for me, just so that I could just stay up. And I think I was working with her for a year to 2 years, and it was costing me a lot of money, and eating into my charity worker entry level salary. And believe me, that was very, very little. Second therapist then came as the HSE, or Health Service Executive in Ireland, like basically like our NHS in the UK, our free healthcare service. My time had finally arrived, and I was able to access free therapy with a clinical psychologist. And I can tell you I was incredibly reluctant to do so. I did not want to go with somebody else. I was like, no, I am very happy with, what was her name? Mary Claire was the first one. I'm very, very happy with her. I don't want to, you know, go with somebody else. I'm doing really good. And to be honest with you, in doing good was definitely not what I was doing. I was doing meh, is probably what I'd say. I was having a nice therapeutic journey with my first therapist. I think she was pretty fresh out of college, and this is not a blame on her or anything like that. It was just that, like, we didn't gel together looking back on it now. And that's something that I've really learned over the course of my time being in therapy, is that the relationship between you and your therapist is of utmost importance. Because it's like any relationship with your friends, your family, with your significant other. It has to be a very well gelled, very well matched therapist. And what I was doing was going in and having a nice time. There were some things that were a bit tricky, and she was helping me kind of deal with day to day. Basically what she was doing was helping me, as I say many times now, is to tread water, just to keep my head above water. But we weren't getting into what was going on underneath. So like, my head is like this iceberg sticking out of the water, you know, it's all like, you know, there's this little bit is up, but there's all this crap underneath the water that needs to be dealt with. And we weren't getting into that. We weren't even scratching the surface of that. She was helping me to function on the week by week, day to day basis, so that I could just, I don't want to say this in like, this isn't in a flippant way, and I don't know, because it never went that way, because I was able to tread water and to continue. But she kept me alive. I don't know if I would have done anything. I had been self-harming, but there's a possibility. I think if it had gone further, that I didn't really see the worth in continuing on. Whew. Don't think I've shared that ever before on the internet. I don't want to say this flippantly, because it's certainly not a flippant topic or flippant thing to say. And as I said, I don't know, because I thankfully and so gratefully was able to just hang on. That's what she helped me to do, was just to hang on. And then I met my HSE clinical lead, clinical psychologist. She came because actually I ended up having to go with her because my first clinical psychologist was relocating. So I ended up having to go to the new one. And within 2 sessions of that, I was like, ew, so this is therapy. Sorry, this is therapy. What I've been doing so far was having nice chats and kind of coping mechanisms, a little bit of CBT, but really we hadn't gotten into it. We had no idea what was going on under that water. And the clinical psychologist, Louise, was her name, she started to excavate some stuff, and instead of doing CBT, which is the kind of typical approach for dealing with binge eating disorder. And remember that this is what I was doing therapy for, was for binge eating disorder. And she thought that it would be better to do relationship therapy. So to examine my relationship with food and where my relationship with food came from, and my relationship with those who influenced my relationship with food. So instead of doing relationship therapy with the people who influenced it, it was just between myself and herself and the food. And it was really, really, really interesting. And on day 1 or 2, the first session, she drew a diagram for me, and it was a, let me draw the diagram now for you. So 3 places. Can we see this? It's really bright. We have the bad place, and it's back to front. Apologies, you just bear with me. We have the okay place and we have the good place. And you can see that the okay place is wider, and the bad place and the good place are smaller. And she explained that most people live in this okay place. This is where you kind of want to live on the day to day. The good is kind of where you fluctuate between, and the bad is where I was. So I labeled myself as down here in the bad place, and her goal was to get me in the okay place. Sorry, it's so bright. And you can fluctuate between this and this, that's very normal, and you can fluctuate between this and this, that's also very normal. So you can fluctuate between the bad and the okay and the good. That's normal, but your general state is the okay place. And I hadn't been in the okay place for a long time. I had spent the majority of my time in the bad place, in the very bottom bad place. And I had some, whereas people will have kind of some dalliances into good from okay, I was having dalliances into the okay place. And her goal was to get me to be firmly in the okay place, and that I could fluctuate into bad and have bad days, because that's perfectly normal. We're all humans and we don't believe in toxic positivity here. And to also go into the good place when really good things happen, and to be able to celebrate them and to be able to be okay, to be good. And I would say that Louise, the clinical psychologist, helped me to get into the okay place firmly for the first time in my life. And after my GP had said those fateful words to me, once you fix your head, the weight will just fall off, I believed that I would start to lose weight. And little did I know that there was a whole other plethora of crap that had to be dealt with before I could start that journey. So I completed my clinical psychology work with Louise after the allotted time had run out. And so, as we all know, I kind of dallianced through, you know, weight loss until I had my realization. And I'm sorry if you've seen the first video, but I think this is really important to explain this. Like, this is what changed everything. Driving down the N7 one day, I got sacked by not a literal bus, but a figurative one. A figurative lorry knocked the stuffing out of me, literally knocked the core out of me, the entire being out of me. And I realized that everything I thought about myself and that incessant noise in my head, first I realized there was an incessant noise in my head, and that the incessant noise in my head telling me how bad I was and how awful I was didn't belong to me, and it was nothing to do with me. And it was just what I'd picked up and cues from society and from my upbringing and from people around me. And it was just this, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're not good, you're not good. It doesn't matter because you're fat, doesn't matter because you're fat, doesn't matter because you're fat. What is that? Oh God, you have to go to somewhere, you're going to go somewhere looking like that. That's terrible. Oh yeah, you might like that dress, but that dress isn't going to look good on you. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, you think you're going to go for a management position? You can't go for a management position. You're an idiot. This is like constant, never ending. And I then started with my third therapist then, after trying so desperately to find a therapist to deal and help me to deal with my negative self-talk. And I went back to the same GP and I had a chat with him, and he called it my Damascus moment. My GP is Muslim, and he said that is your Damascus moment, or maybe what some Christians might call your come to Jesus moment, where you have that realization that clicks, that changes everything about you. it's something that goes. And when I tell you I felt like I had been hit by a bus, I felt like I had been mentally and emotionally hit by a bus. Physically, I wasn't okay. I was 23 and a bit stone, but I was technically okay. But everything under the surface, everything that wasn't matter in me, physical matter, was destroyed. Absolute, changed, completely changed. Everything changed. I'm sure I would love to have seen like a brain scan. If you could scan a brain at that point where you have that kind of realization and you just wake up. It's like I woke up. Oh God, I've been dreaming my whole life. I spent 30 something years dreaming. I don't know who I am. I don't know anything about myself. I know nothing. And I knew, well, one thing I did know is that I needed help to figure this out, because what is this feeling? Like, what is this? So after some failed attempts to find a new therapist, because they're busy, there's definitely, you will never be short of work if you're a therapist in Ireland, that's for sure. I find one of them who I've been recommended, and somebody recommended somebody else, and they recommend somebody else, and then they recommend someone, they finally recommended this person, this lady. And I don't share the details of my current therapist with publicly, for a number of reasons. She won't see anybody if they come through me, because it's a conflict of interest. And also for me, it's a boundary. This is one of the most important relationships that I have, and it's not about gatekeeping, it's about protecting myself. So I do have therapists, if you would like a recommendation, that are in Ireland. I cannot recommend therapists outside of Ireland, I'm sorry, I do not know any. But in Ireland I have 2 that I can recommend, and if you want to DM me on Instagram, that's the way that I will respond. But anyway, I've contacted this therapist. She called me, I think. Let's call her Mary. She called me and I had a chat with her, and I wasn't sure. I just went along because she was the one that was free and time-wise, and she was able to slot me in when I needed to within work, so I could take my lunch hour and I could go physically. So I figured, okay, let's give it a go. And the first couple of sessions, I felt like she was really wooey, like really a bit too kind. I'm not used to that, I'm not used to that kind of like very touchy-feely. It kind of makes me put my barriers up, and especially at that time I was all barriers up. I was all boundaries. I was all not boundaries, not healthy boundaries, just barriers. Just don't come near me. Like, just don't, like, this is no offense, not defense, offense. Like, away with you. So for somebody who's to help me with therapy, to help me with my mental health, to try and get me through the stage, was so the opposite. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. But I just surrendered to it. And we started working through some stuff. And I can tell you, it was the most painful emotional experience I've ever been through. I didn't not cry. I cried out of probably the 50 sessions that we had together. I cried at 46 of them, I would say, maybe 47. And I mean like cry, like ugly cry, like Kim K losing a diamond earring cry. And what she does is a specific type of therapy. And it's called sensory motor psychotherapy. And let me read out a bit to you so I don't butcher what it actually is, because it's a bit complicated. But it's a therapeutic modality for trauma and attachment issues. Sensory motor psychotherapists work under the understanding that the body is an integral source of information which can guide resourcing and accessing and processing of challenging and traumatic development experiences. It is a holistic approach that includes somatic, emotional, and cognitive processing and integration. And basically what it does is it believes that the sensory motor psychotherapy, kind of what you do in it is you work through what you're feeling in your body when you're talking about a certain thing and start to release it through your body. And what happened was I started to release a lot of trauma that I had blocked out. A lot of trauma that I had blocked out. Not forgotten about, the majority of it. There was some that I had, there was a lot that I'd forgotten. But even some that I didn't understand had an impact on me. That's something that's it's so crazy to me. And excuse the term use of crazy in this context, but I think I thought I had been okay with a lot of things that had happened to me. And I realized I wasn't okay with them. And how could I be okay with them? How could I just let certain things happen and it not have some kind of impact on me? And what we did was we worked to heal the trauma. And what happened also in it is I finally understood for the first time in my life why I had been overweight and obese my whole life. Why? Nobody ever asked why. Have you ever asked yourself why? Why was I this weight? Because it's not normal. It's not typical to be 23 stone. It's not you don't get to be 23 stone without something happening. And the weight is a result. It's a symptom. It's an outcome or an output of actions and behaviors that are triggered by a situation, by a trauma. So let me go through that again. So my weight was a symptom or an output, literally just an output, a result of actions and behaviors that I carried out that were as a result of being triggered by trauma. And what was going on inside my head, this negative self-talk, was as a result of trauma. And I was constantly being triggered. And the negative self-talk was so incessant that my behavior and action was to escape it. My reaction to the triggering was to escape my body. I don't want to freaking deal with what's going on in here. I can tell you that. I have no intention of dealing with what's happening inside me. This is like, take Jack out of the way, he's in my way. This is so, like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to deal with this in my head. I don't want to deal with what's being clung to in my body. Well, my body is remembering. I don't want to deal with whatever's happening down there. So I'm going to go out here. I'm going to fly out here. I'm going to hang around here in the ether because that seems like a much better place to hang out than where I am in my body. And what happens when the adult, the mature person escapes, the inner child comes in. The inner child becomes present. The person I was locked at an age when the trauma happened, and some of the trauma happened, or when the trauma began, and they took over and they sought an action or a behavior that was comforting, and the only one that they knew that was comforting was food. So that's why I became overweight. My trauma triggered me. I couldn't handle it, so I escaped my body, and the traumatized child locked inside me took over and she sought comfort, and the only way that she knew, that the number one form of comfort that she knew, was food. And from that, she ate and ate and ate and ate to avoid the discomfort inside, and basically built a wall between me and the rest of the world, and kind of locked myself into this nice little horrendous discomfort zone, or comfort in my discomfort zone, and built an extra 13 stone or 180 pounds around me. And that's how I became overweight. Now, I'm not going to get into the genesis of my trauma because I don't think it's important. It's not important, and I don't need to. But we all have reasons. There's all something. And if you're watching this and you're 23 stone or whatever it is overweight, and there's something going on, you know, there's an addiction, because food is the same as another addiction. Food is the same as gambling or sex or drugs or alcohol. But there's a bit of a bitch that comes with food, is that you have to eat to survive. You don't have to gamble to survive. You don't have to have sex to survive. I know some people say you don't. On a daily basis, you have to consume food. You have to consume calories in order to survive. And so you have to find a way to deal with the trauma, deal with the discomfort, manage it, work through on a daily basis to manage the discomfort, heal the trauma, so that you can do what you need to do to take the barriers down, to take the wall that you've built down. And that's what I did. Therapy helped me to deal on a day-to-day basis with the discomfort that I felt that was because of the triggered trauma, and it helped me to work through the trauma so that I could finally be ready to lose weight, and actually finally be ready to change every single aspect of my life as a person. Because not only have I changed my physical appearance, I have changed everything about me. I've changed jobs, because I was stuck in a job for 11 years, that I didn't like. And it finally gave me the courage to leave it. I changed my ways with people that I know. I changed some friendships. I changed who I am. And whoever says you can't change, you can change. No matter what age you are, you can change. And that's what therapy helped me to do. And there's a couple of interesting elements that came through my last therapeutic journey. And one was when I got to meet the real me for the first time. As I said, it seems a bit wooey sometimes, sensory motor psychotherapy. It's really phenomenal. It's really, really interesting. And there's a lot. If you remember, I said that when I had my realization, I felt like my insides had been jolted to the side, like literally, like my core being was like, ugh. And now I realize, it's gonna sound really woo-y, but during some of the times, you don't do meditation necessarily in sensory psychotherapy. You kind of do like work where you ground yourself, like you really ground yourself. And that exercise that I've done before about like feeling your feet, that comes from that. That's to pull you back into your body, so you're not in the ether anymore. You kind of come back into your body and be present. And coming back into it, I was feeling it was a positive time that we were looking through in the work, and something had kind of triggered a good feeling, and my therapist Mary had me go further into that feeling, and further and further and further. And it was quite early on, and I had this image in my mind, and I can feel it now. And it's, oh God, my heart's beating so much. It was basically like I got to meet the real me for the first time. And it was this beautiful, bright, almost blue-white light inside me. And she was flowing long hair and very elegant. And I saw her unzip from the inside, and I was still fully at my full weight at this time. Unzip from the inside my body and elegantly step out and be who I was supposed to be. And I talk about that now, that feeling like I wanted to get this weight off me, because this didn't belong to me. This weight wasn't who I am. That is who I am. That is what belongs to me. That is the feeling that I have. A light, not a darkness, a light inside me. And getting to experience that was one of the things that, and every time I reconnected, I just knew that that's who I'm supposed to be. And as I got further on my journey, and not even, honestly, it's not about the weight loss. It's not about the weight. It's about that feeling and doing things that make me connect further to that light inside me. Like sharing my story, that makes that light brighter inside me. Helping others makes that light brighter inside me. Yes, weight loss is a nice, like I was able to do that, but that's only one of the things that I've been able to do since I had my realization. And it's funny that jolt, I believe, is connected to that feeling, because that feeling is like the real inner inside of me. That is the real, that is who I am in here. That's the real me. And I slowly but surely was able to pull those lines of energy back in and build myself up and unzip that suit and walk free. That's what therapy helped me to do. Whew. I did not expect that to go this way. You never know. Sometimes you start these videos and you're not really sure where they're going to go. Therapy is one of the best investments you can make in yourself, if you have the resources to. I understand that I speak from a place of privilege because I had an income that I could make work. I hope that if you are watching this and you need therapy, that you have the means to look for a therapist. I will leave in the description box down below some therapeutic resources, including a link to the Sensory Motor website, and to some organizations that I know that offer some therapy. And I believe that there are therapists as well, therapists in training, who will offer like pay what you can rate. And if I can find details about those, I'll leave them down below as well. There is nothing weak about seeking a therapy, about seeking help. In fact, I believe when you understand your own limitations, you become stronger, and you understand that you actually need support with this. That's really powerful. It's really powerful to admit that you need help and to seek help and to take the action to do so. And if you get the right therapist and date your therapist, I will leave the link to my last video where I did some tips about finding a therapist and tips about therapy. I'm not going to get into that now because I have that resource there. And I've kind of gone in a very different angle than I thought I was going to with this video, which is often the case when I sit down in front of a camera. I want to say as well that I completed my therapeutic journey for food addiction, which is what my last with the sensory motor psychotherapy was for, was to understand why I was overweight and obese, and to help me to manage the food addiction, which was as a result of the trauma. And that I completed that within a year. I finished that within a year, and I did a little bit again when I got pregnant, because it was very difficult and challenging for me to see my body increase in size. He's knocking the door. It was very challenging for me to see my body increase in size, but that is what happens when one is growing a baby. They're not getting fat, they are growing a human, and it took me a little bit of time to get my head around that because I was 4 weeks after reaching my goal weight. So that was just need a little bit of guidance with that. And then again, for postpartum depression, I sought therapy from the same therapist. And Mary is so wonderful that she allows me to dip in and out as I see fit. And I think the majority of therapists will allow you to do that if they have a good relationship with you. One last thing that I wanted to add to this is something that therapy really helped me to do. And it was to take responsibility for my role in becoming overweight and obese. I had previously blamed a lot of people for my weight and my situation in life. And while I never kind of turned it back onto myself. Now, I'm not saying that from a place of shame. It's more from a place of understanding that I had a role in this, in terms of that food was my method of escape, and that food addiction was my methodology. You know, I had food addiction, and food was my methodology of escape. So understanding that food was my method led me to understand my role in my weight. And by doing so, I was able to change the habits and actions that got me to that place. So that's just something that therapy really helped me to do, was to understand and accept my role. And therefore, by accepting my role, I understood that it was within my power to change, that I could change my reaction to the situations and not have to reach for food, but I could actually work through them. So I didn't have to have a reaction. I could respond to triggers, but I didn't have to react by looking for food and going for food. Guys, I have been talking for quite a long time, and this has been quite an intense and vulnerable video for me to film. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Please, if you have gotten to the end of this video, leave me a sun emoji, because I want you guys to know that there can be a bright light at the end of the journey, because that's what I felt. I finally got to meet my bright light and become that bright light at the end of my therapeutic journey, because that really, for me, this is so much more important than my weight loss. It is so much more encompassing and so much more, it means so much more impactful to me than my weight loss. My weight loss is just like a nice, happy outcome of this, a fantastic outcome of this. But this feeling, getting to know who I am, getting to understand my tics and my behaviors and help to change those and help to change the way that I act and react and respond, and that means so much more, so much more. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there, as we are so much more than our weight. We are so much more than our weight loss. We are whole beings that have so much to offer this world, and please don't ever forget that. And if you are embarking on a therapeutic journey, I wish you the best. You are brave to do so. You are worth the effort, the finance, and the pain and discomfort to get through it. Because the other side is pretty great. You might get to meet your bright light. Bye guys.